You are listening to Fox Radio 910 and 104.3. Welcome to Front Porch Tales, sponsored by Crowning Touch Senior Moving Services of Roanoke, Virginia. My name is Linda Balentine, the president of Crowning Touch and your host for this series. I travel into the mountains to interview the people of Appalachia and collect their share of memories. So now, we invite you to sit a spell with us and listen to stories, both historical and current, that emanate from the heart of Appalachia. All righty, so here we go. I'm still with Lester Kodger. We're still picking up our Front Porch Tales out here in Central Appalachia. And we're actually talking about Smiley. And who in the heck was Smiley, Lester?
Oh, Lord. Well, let's get this whole story together here correctly. Is this happens to this particular time is one of the first places I ever lived here in the Appalachians, and it was out on Allegheny and actually West Virginia, and the West Virginia line. As you know, Highland County is at the western and northern part of Highland County borders the state of West Virginia. So you don't have to go far to be in West Virginia. And we were just over the line and on actually in the very top of Allegheny Mountain, a beautiful place in the summertime, an absolutely cruel and harsh place in the wintertime.
Yeah, you needed snowshoes up there.
You needed to not be wanting to go anywhere or do anything in the wintertime.
That's right.
So I left college to come back down to the mountains to live here, and that would be full time. Never left since. And the house we ended up having a place. Alan Stewart and forget his wife's name, but anyway, Lucille Stewart from over in Bartow, West Virginia, let us live in their house. That was another interesting thing. You could live in homes here and pay no rent as long as you maintained them. They were happy to have somebody in them.
That's right.
Just to have somebody there to keep an eye on their animals or whatever, which, who would ever thought that you could come out someplace and live rent-free.
Because there was a whole missing generation. Their children had left.
Their children
and
were
there was
not
nobody,
there.
There was really nobody here. There were a lot fewer people here when we came 50 years ago than there were 100 years ago.
Absolutely.
Because the tops of the mountains were full of farms 100 years ago.
And communities that are long gone. But we were made an arrangement that allowed us to live in this place, and we call it the Allegheny House, of course, because it's right on the top of Allegheny, just underneath the Allegheny battlefield. That's still there and has never been hardly touched. And so we moved in, unfortunately, in the fall. And now here I am from the basically city living and so forth. And
you had no idea what you were in for.
No idea what I'm getting into, and I'm just think this is all cute and fun and all that. So we move in this place. Didn't have anything but a heating wood stove.
No electricity.
No electricity.
How did you get your water?
This place happened to have a beautiful spring just above the house, and it was situated in a hollow that overlooked the north side, a beautiful view that overlooked the north side.
And that's why people built Mountain. That way.
That's why they built that way.
They always found the spring first. That was the most critical component.
You got to have water.
That's right.
Need water. That's number one. Well, and somebody happened to put a pipe that ran into a sink in the kitchen.
Wow.
And which had running water. So, which is unthinkable out in the middle of nowhere. Usually you're carrying it, you have a well or something, and you're pumping it or whatever. But anyway, we had running water, no electricity. And so I'm in there, and thank God for a friend, I think he has been on your radio program, Tony Petrosky.
Tony Tree.
Well, Tony Petrosky,
yeah.
Tony Tree and I and my to-be wife, Judy, and some friends of another friend from up in New England had come down with us. We were going to spend the winter in the Allegheny house.
And that was remote. I've been to that house. That was about as remote as you could be.
8 miles in one direction to the nearest house, 8 miles the closest house there was. There was nobody anywhere near us. We were extremely
And in the winter time, there were drifts of snow.
Nobody came out there. But
nobody.
We didn't know this. And so I came down here, just to let you know real short, I came down here like with 220-something pounds. By the end, when spring got here, I was 160 pounds.
Wow.
And the reason I was 160 pounds is because I almost froze to death, and I literally starved.
I was going to say you had no food in there.
We had
Not enough
nothing,
food.
but we were thankful that Tony was from a little. There was a friend of ours named Fitz that had a place over in what we call the Valley over near Bluegrass. We were thankful that they had put up some food and had a few
Wow.
things. And I got my first introduction to leather breeches.
Green beans
And
strung
I
on a
had
string.
no clue what leather breeches were. That we're going to have leather breeches, but I'll tell
It
you,
didn't sound appetizing, did it?
try dried beans, rehydrated in water, and we didn't even have condiments. We have plenty of alcohol though, because we thought that, and that ran out quickly within a couple of weeks. And then we thought, because we're coming down here to party and we're going to, have a good time. And then reality set in.
Let me ask you. I was going to ask you. When did you are an excellent hunter now? When did you learn how to hunt? Did anybody even have a gun when you were in that house? Did you take up hunting at all? Because Lord knows there were plenty of deer roaming around if you could climb those hills to get them.
I knew of hunting. My family was out on ranges, shotguns, and there was guns always around my family, but it was for pleasure and shooting, events and so forth.
Right.
I knew about hunting, but never did any hunting. I learned to hunt here in the mountains, and that first year I didn't have a gun. I didn't have any transportation. We had no transportation. We got well, I'm sorry, it was wrong. My wife, Judy, did have a vehicle we brought down. It was an old Galaxy 500, so we used that in an incredible vehicle.
I remember that car.
Yeah, we just had a little pause. Linda had to tie my hands behind my back because I fling them around. I'm a hand talker. But anyway, where was I?
We were talking about the truck.
Oh,
Judy's...
getting to the truck. So yeah, I had
Was it a truck or was it a car?
It was a truck. So anyway, that was after enduring the
but
first,
it wasn't a four-wheel
first
drive
winter.
truck.
It was a two-wheel drive.
So it's totally worthless.
1950 Chevy pickup truck that I got off of Henry Marshall, who happened to run the Bluegrass Mercantile store, who I became friends with in Bluegrass. The truck had been sitting out back, hadn't run for years and years. It was the truck they used to haul groceries all across the mountains to Stanton.
I can't believe
to
it.
his store.
They didn't even have. Did they have four-wheel? Well, they had Jeeps back
there
in
was
1950.
No four-wheel
but
drives.
There were no four-wheel
there
drives
were no
then.
four-wheel
Trucks weren't
drives.
four-wheel
Everything
drives.
was two-wheel drives, and there was Willie Jeeps back then. They were in the 40s, but
Right.
very few people. A few people had some four-wheel Jeeps and Willies and so forth, but most of the folks didn't. And this vehicle,
They just made do.
hey, you use chains.
Oh, that's
We
right.
had
Good
tire
old
chains.
Yeah.
That's another thing you had to learn. Who knew about how many of y'all put tire chains on your vehicles?
It can be a trick
every
putting
time
them
it
on.
gets a little slick outside.
Yeah.
Well, let me tell you something. When I first started learning about tire chains, it took me an hour to put a set of tire chains on.
And they're worthless on ice.
And they're kind of worthless on ice. But let me tell you, once you learn how to put a set of chains on, I could set a set of chains on a vehicle within just a few minutes. I'd be ready to roll
One of
in
the
no time at all.
necessary
Something
Appalachian
you have to
skills
learn how to do.
You need to know.
If you want to go, that's what you had to do. So after that first winter, we needed some decent transportation. I saw that truck back behind Henry's. I said, "Hey, would you sell me that?" And he goes, "Oh, you don't want that old thing?" And so I said, "Yes, I do." I said, "As long as it runs, I want it."
Right.
So we did. Tony and I did a bunch of roof painting back then, to earn a little bit of money from some barns and so forth, and to get a few necessities, and things like condiments, salt and sugar and all that good stuff that you need.
Yeah.
We just found some, put some good labor to work here to earn a little bit of cash to get the necessities you need: coffee, flour, honey, just things, and then. And then firewood. How do you get your firewood? Well, you got to have a truck to get your firewood in. Got awful hard getting firewood in those cold nights. You realize, and that out there in the middle of those mountains at nighttime,
Right.
we didn't burn the stove at night.
No, you've got
We
under
covered
a whole pile of
We
blankets.
covered ourselves up with the quilts, all these bunch of quilts that we had. I remember waking up in the middle of the wintertime with snow on top of my head.
I know, I had it. I wore a hat to bed because the wind would
The
blow
wind
through.
would blow through the darn
and
cracks
around
in
the
the
windows.
story.
The windows weren't sealed, and there would be snow on your pillow.
Absolutely.
Oh, I remember. And then you wake up in the morning, it's so friggin' cold, you just have to spend the first hour standing right by the wood stove as soon as you
It's
built
amazing.
it up.
It's amazing. I didn't leave here the first winter, but I wanted to be a mountain man, and I was bent on being a mountain man. And so we endured that first winter and got a hold of Smiley. Smiley was an old Chevy 1950 pickup truck, and the grill looks like the vehicle, like the thing was smiling.
That's why you called
and
it
that's why
Smiling.
we called it Smiling.
Well, I bet it earned its keep.
Oh,
I have
my
a feeling
Lord.
it earned
it
its
earned
keep.
that vehicle, well, let me tell you, that vehicle made it all the way up to New England where my folks lived, with a rooster in the back of the vehicle that I had to take with me over Christmas, during a Christmas.
Was that going to be dinner?
Nope,
What the
that
heck
was
you
just
take a
that was
rooster up
my
there?
pet rooster, so I
Oh,
didn't
my
want
God.
anything to happen to him.
You got to be
I took
kidding.
him all the way to New England. He was in New York City at a friend of mine's house, crowing downtown New York in the Bronx in the morning, and by that evening we was up in Massachusetts, and he crowed there for a week when I visited my folks, and he came hauled him all the way back to the mountains.
Did
all
you
the
really?
way back to the mountains.
That was the most
again.
well-traveled rooster on the
That
eastern
was a
seaboard.
heck of a rooster. Now he got it. He was indoctrinated.
Did he have any hens to keep him company,
He
or
had
was he
no
celibate?
hens.
He was a celibate
no
rooster.
Hens.
Oh my gosh!
The hens stayed. I don't know how the reason why the hens stayed here. But
Well,
the
you
hens,
couldn't take
the
them
hens,
all.
The hens, we didn't have a hen house or anything. The hens,
Yeah, they ran
hens lived in a locust bush
up in the trees.
and the trees in the
Yeah.
locust bush all winter long with snow. All of them did great. Had no problem at all.
Little trouble finding the
Little
eggs, didn't
tough
you?
finding the eggs all around, but we'd have to mark and make sure we weren't eating old eggs.
Oh,
But
yeah.
it was cool at that time, and then didn't have to worry too much about them spoiling. But so Smiley made it back, and Smiley was used to haul our wood, to haul our apples to the presses so that we can make our cider, to haul of our
I remember picking apples
absolute.
up on Allegheny. We all used to go around and pick the apples from the wild apple trees that were around, as well
We
as
certainly
every
did.
farm had apple trees.
Every place
Because
had
it was a
orchards,
huge-
because that was part of the staple of the old
That's
folks.
correct. It was, and they
Nobody
used it for
went to
everything.
grocery stores here.
They made apple sauce. They would store really well in the root cellar. They would store whole. They would dry them,
You could dry
and
them.
you could make great
You could
cider,
store-
boy.
You could. There was tricks to all of that because you couldn't let an apple bruise,
That's
or
right.
it wouldn't keep.
That's right.
So you had to pick it, and you had to wrap it. And with us, people use
Yeah,
use
newspaper.
sawdust.
Yeah.
We use newspaper.
Newspaper.
We'd wrap the apples in newspaper and then fill up our baskets and with
And they would last
apples.
forever. You just
it
put
was
them
all
somewhere.
winter long in the cellar. That's what
That's
the
right.
root cellars were for, to protect. Put your goods in. You could keep carrots in sawdust. You could keep.
They
you
would
could-
fry
you-
the
you
apples.
can
They
hang-
made great fried apples all winter long.
Oh Lord, pies,
eggs and
pies,
ham
and
I know.
you're making
getting
me hungry.
hungry.
You're making me hungry. Woo! I have a great story. One time, I want to tell you about the first
What?
encounter that I ever had of what mountain folks and having supper, which is their lunch.
That's correct. It
I
is.
didn't
They
know-
eat their big meal in the middle of the day,
They eat their big meal,
and it
in the
makes
day.
sense because then they have to work it all off before you
Tony
go
and
to bed.
Judy and I were doing something for an old lady. Her name was Patty Kaiser, and outside of Bluegrass, and it was during lunchtime. She wanted us to come and have lunch with her, and so we went, yeah, sure. We of course, thank you. We'll have lunch with you. So we did whatever we were doing, and we went in to have lunch. And I walked in. We walk in, and the table was like. It's literally, it was 3 tables long.
They pile up everything on
There was
They do.
there was pastries and rolls and bread and meats and pickled this and whatever. The whole table was spread, and
You would have thought it was Thanksgiving.
I was immediately going, oh my God, I'm sitting here. I'm going to interrupt they have a big family's getting ready to come over, and, they're getting ready to have a big thing here. We're all in the way, I don't really want to, it was making me uncomfortable.
You'd never met that kind of
I had
hospitality
no
at
idea
lunchtime.
that was normal.
It was normal.
To have
You're
a spread
absolutely
like that, to have something put out, that was just for us 3, and it was enough to fill 30 or 40 people.
Well, that is another mark of the hospitality of the Appalachian people. They pull out all the stops when somebody comes to visit them. Matter of fact, they won't let you leave their house unless you sit down, have a cup of coffee, have a piece of pie, have a slice of hot bread.
You are not leaving hungry.
That's right. You don't leave hungry.
You're not leaving hungry.
Which is really precious.
Amazing.
Really precious.
And, you realize all this food that's in front of you is stuff that's been, they've put up.
Handmade.
It's been come out of the root cellar, come out of the canning or dried or whatever, is going on that had to be prepared. I mean, incredible. Who does that anymore?
Well, nobody. And the truth is, there's a whole big issue now with how poisoned our food is. And these people walked a wide circle around all of that for all of these years, and they're still walking a wide circle around it. The people that are still living here and have the big gardens and have family traditions here.
Well, it's no wonder they're 85 and 85 years
95
old.
and out working.
And still out here cutting trees and logging and timbering.
That's
at
right.
85. How many 85-year-olds out there? Friend over here, Ronnie White, my Lord, he's been dropped branches on top of his head and everything else, crawled out at 2 or 3 miles to his truck, with a major concussion and broken vertebrae in his back. I mean,
because they're stout.
These
are
tough
stout.
people.
They call it stout out here.
These are not the people that live out here. And another thing is,
well, it's inspirational though for you, isn't it?
Everybody thinks mountain and high. They're all hillbillies and stupid and all that. Let me tell you something.
No, the smartest people I have ever met.
If you want to survive,
right.
They're the best people you ever want around you.
That's right. If there's ever a catastrophe, I wish I could make it to Highland
you
County.
best want to be with the people in the mountains because they're going to keep you alive.
That's absolutely right.
And so, I mean, I have just come to admire.
We both do.
The way of life and who they
right
are.
With you.
And, just the simple things. We take so much for granted in the cities. You go to the supermarket, you get this and that. Well, who's producing it? Who's doing all this? You don't even think of it. Who's slaughtering, who's raising your cattle? So we're right out here next to my house here. I feed them apples every day. So, all that meat and stuff you're eating, you may be eating the ones out here that are happy with me and they hang out with my dog and we eat apples and corn cobs and all this. They're happy cows.
Well, and when they get hurt, there's no Med Express right around the corner.
There's
nothing.
No.
No, they work up their own splints for their own bones and go on.
Our closest hospital's over an hour away.
Yeah, it is over an hour.
We do have airlift right now. We didn't years ago, so the mountain folks, and that's another thing, we'll talk about is I learned about herbs. I learned about trees. I learned about the medicines that are available here. What do you do when you need an antibiotic? What do you do if the antibiotics aren't out there? Do you know about the funguses that can grow on the trees out here in the apples? That is a great strong antibiotic that's just as good as amoxicillin or anything else. I mean, there's things that are available right here in front of you that we've lost the old ways. And that's something that was always interested me and I thought it's always incredible. And the older folks were much more in tune to that living that we knew when we first came here.
And we studied it. We brought books. We had library. It was before Google. And I remember picking handfuls of pennyroyal.
Absolutely.
Pennyroyal oil. I could put it in my horse's bridle and there wouldn't be a mosquito or a horsefly anywhere around us, and I would
and put it on yourself,
crunch it and rub it on me, or getting exposed to poison ivy and getting some jewelweed.
Exactly.
Who
knew that jewelweed grows right next to poison ivy, and all you do is crush it up.
God's
but most
perfect
people don't
plan.
know these things.
That's right, they don't, but they do out here.
The lost arts, the lost remedies and so forth. But we were fortunate, and because I didn't have TV, no electricity, learning how to use kerosene lanterns, learning to use a wood stove. When the first time somebody said, "Hey, turn down the damper,"
yeah, you had to figure out what the damper was.
Turn down what's a damper? I had no clue what a damper was. That it was controlled the venting of the stovepipe.
And then you learned which kinds of wood to bank a fire with overnight. Locust will burn forever. It'll still be there in the morning.
Absolutely.
Not so with necessarily sassafras or something else.
Now, folks, that comes from somebody that knows their wood right there.
I do. I know my wood. but we would go ahead and pick certain kinds of wood, and you can identify it in the wood pile by the color.
We learned all this.
Yeah, we learned it all.
This is what we did when we came here, and we learned this. I learned what trees to identify trees. I learned what trees not to do. I learned what plants and to use, what I could use, what mushrooms we could eat. I learned how to grow a garden. I didn't know about gardening.
I didn't either.
We roughed it. You know, when you almost starved to death in winter, it's amazing what you can learn. I learned how to let me tell you something.
You were really motivated to learn after
very
that.
next winter, if you wanted a place that had plenty of food, we had it. And then we also got a wood cook stove, because the wood stove, we couldn't make any bread. We couldn't make biscuits. We couldn't do anything.
Oh, that's right. Not with your wood stove. Not
with a wood stove. You could do it with a Dutch oven pot.
Right.
You could have done that, but I didn't know how to use the Dutch oven pot then. But, we finally got a wood stove. My gosh, you think we won the lottery.
That's right.
We had a nice...
like they've died and gone to heaven.
It was an old Southern Comfort. Came from Bartow, West Virginia, off a lady named Miss Jolly. And guess what the name of the wood stove?
The Jolly. It was a Jolly wood stove.
Miss Jolly.
Yeah, isn't that neat? And I had a wood stove that was actually gas. I had an eight burner stove. 4 were wood.
Oh, that was
and
a
2
great
ovens.
stove.
That car stove.
It was a great
that
stove.
And it had to be 5 feet long. And it was the most marvelous thing, because I could crank that up when I was canning in the summer. You could just really turn out some food.
It was so convenient.
That was wonderful.
That was a great stove. But I'm kind of throwing so many things out right now.
I've got something I want to mention too, and that is that on my farm I had, I used to have to put my laundry on top of my workhorse and take the workhorse down, put my snowshoes on, walk all the way down, however long that was, a mile, to the, cross the river into a pickup truck that I had parked down there, put my horse in the barn, get my laundry, put in the truck, drive 35 miles to Franklin, do my laundry, and come back in reverse and do the whole thing.
And that's crossing the river.
And that was crossing the river with my baby on top of the laundry on top of the workhorse.
That's exactly right. And that Ford.
I know.
Let me tell you something.
It had a steel bed, man. That thing would go through anything because it was so heavy. Let me tell you something,
Ray, and I remember the time it didn't make it through there very well either.
Yeah, it had a couple of issues.
Some interesting adventures across that Ford, wasn't
But that's why I loved getting my gasoline-powered Ringer washing machine. It was a gasoline-powered Ringer washer.
Gas on the bottom, and there's a Ringer washer.
That's
we
right.
had one too.
Isn't that something? And I put a muffler on mine because it made a loud racket.
I drug that thing around for years.
I'll tell you, that was it beat doing your laundry in the creek, and it beat going all the way to the. And then you had your clothesline. You hung your clothes up, and it might be frozen when you took them down if it was winter time. But then you dried it out by the wood stove. It was just everything about life.
Life here
then was very, very real and accentuated. Every sensibility that you had was stimulated, and you were always on the verge of survival. Survival was not, it was something you really thought about. You had to really prep. In other words, there wasn't a lot of hang out, do nothing. It was
survival. Oh no, there was no time to. If you're going to sit on your butt.
There was nobody sitting
you
on
wouldn't
your butt.
You wouldn't be here very long.
No,
if this is not the place that you think you're going to come and just sit around and go, isn't that beautiful? Isn't that cool? And just enjoy nature. And you do that. But this is this is survival. This is living.
Yep, you have your moments at the end of the day.
Yep.
I remember eating dinner at 10 o'clock at night. Many, many times you wait till the sun goes down because you're working the entire time. Because we were building fence, putting tin roofs on our buildings, doing the garden, doing the horses. I remember
always something.
I remember taking the baby and putting her out in the apple orchard in a basket draped in cheesecloth.
Yep.
So that I could go and just work. And Loose Dog, my red setter, used to go and sit right next to her while she was out there.
Forgot about the red setter.
Yeah, just so that we could, work up until the very last minute.
And there was good times at nighttime. We were sitting there too, and John and pouring glasses of hard cider and just enjoying those winter evenings.
They did. They enjoyed life as hard as I think working hard made people really appreciate even the little bits of time that they had.
Absolutely.
To get together. It made you really appreciate camaraderie with other people.
Well, there's something to be said about an idle mind. An idle mind's the worst thing you could have.
That's right. You're right.
It's just, work is not a bad thing. Work is important for the soul and the mind.
It's satisfying.
To give you purpose.
And sense of achievement.
It doesn't seem like, remember Grandma would come out there and say, you all go out there and get them apples and so forth and pick them all up and so forth. I don't want to get them apples. Who wants to get all the insects off the
all
vegetables
those yellow
and all
jackets
that?
around all those apples.
And then all of a sudden you're sitting there one winter evening and that doggone apple pie comes out of the darn oven and Grandma says, you remember when you didn't want to get them apples?
That's right.
Well, if you hadn't have got them, we wouldn't have been enjoying this apple pie right now.
That is right. It's real cause and effect right in your face all the time.
And they were good at putting things like that in perspective for you why you're doing this. It's not just doing it. Don't gripe about it.
Those were important life lessons.
You and I learned survival tactics, how to really live. And to me right now, it was so. You could drop me anywhere, and I can probably survive. That's the gift I got out of it all.
Right.
Is that probably be fine because of the hardship to go through like that. So I'm thankful for all that. But after you do it, then you look for something. Then I need a little bit more purpose and so forth, and get my own place. Then that required you getting a job and lettuce and
and then you had to, it wasn't just a matter of, it's very, very hard now to make a living. There are a few people, generations that have succeeded in making it that have the land paid for, so their only challenge right now is to pay the taxes.
Right.
Which is enough of a challenge. Because now
hard.
as people from the north start penetrating these mountains and looking for cheaper land, it makes it harder to use sheep and cattle and maybe some maple syrup as the tax base.
The mountain tradition and the mountain families is almost gone.
Yep, it is almost gone.
Because the folks that
these are second homers now, right?
The second homers, people that moved in here and so forth and have drove the prices up so high that the local people can't afford to buy.
Yeah, their children
anything.
Can't afford to buy
their kids can't afford it unless it's been handed down through the generations. It's all changing. It's all changing. Is it a good thing? I miss the old time.
I miss the old folks.
I miss the old people.
I miss the old folks. They were such great
traditions,
characters.
the simplicity of life and all that, and the value of and the knowledge of just survival and being able to make a living for yourself. Pretty amazing time. So
Well, and we're going to go ahead and we're going to have another front porch talk. What do you say? Let's have another front porch talk next week, because we have now run out of time again. Boy, it goes fast when we're running our mouth on the front porch. God bless you, Lester. We'll catch up with you next week.
God bless you, Linda.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
You've been listening to Front Porch Tales, courtesy of Crowning Touch Senior Moving Services of Roanoke, Virginia, the only moving company with a consignment shop, auction house, and real estate division. We are a one-stop shop for any senior making a move. Check out our website at crowningtouchusa.com. Or if you are planning a move, call Anna at 540-982-5800 to arrange a free estimate. Our consignment shop is open Tuesday through Saturday, and we accept items on appointment and offer pickup and delivery. And don't forget to check out our monthly browse and bid auctions at 6712 Williamson Road, Roanoke, where you can bid online on over 1,700 items each month. Meanwhile, let's get back together next Friday at noon for more Appalachian Tales from the Front Porch on Fox 910 and 104.3.